really thought he was gonna pull an Android 16 on us.
Let the anger built up inside you flow freely. Please protect the plants, the animals. Protect this world I love.
You've prattled on long enough.
But seriously, Yoshifumi Kotsuka is cooking with this sci-fi space thriller mystery, whatever the heck is going on right now. I think the biggest question that we have to ask is, does Phil have unfeel? Because as we learn this chapter, with the bombshells dropped on us, Phil is not like the rest of the negators, but we'll get into all that. Let's talk about chapter 157, baby. And before we get into it, if you hadn't read this chapter until, today, I feel bad for you. If you were in the Discord, the D-Trope Discord, allegedly, we had access to this chapter a little bit earlier, maybe even last week type earlier. So, join if you'd like. Subscribe if you're new here. Leave a comment for me. As I said, what the heck is Phil? Does he have the ability yet? We gotta figure that out, but let's actually talk about the events which transpired today. And speaking of events, we had a big one to start the chapter off, a popularity poll, and I'm gonna cover this separately in another video dedicated to this thing itself. But the only thing I got to say right now is look at number 2. My boy Andy. If you haven't seen the video, check that out. I miss Andy. Apparently all the rest of the fan base does as well. Fuko's number 1. Who would have ever thought? The GOAT. Arguably the best character in Shonen Jump besides like Luffy. Well, let's talk about the actual chapter. I love the sort of surreal scenario this chapter starts off with. Fuko and Ko are tagging along with Phil in order to save his mom, but they don't even know if anything that's going on is real. They found this boy with no protective gear on in the middle of space, and he just seems completely fine. And they go to his room, and once again, everything seems completely fine. Photos, memorabilia, just many things commemorating him and his mother. Even a bunch of movies which she had bought for him. And although everything seems so normal, Fuko and Gina both question, is this real? Fuko even states, I wasn't able to predict the scenario with just the info from the artifacts. There's no air here, so how can he be able to walk around without a suit? But this is when Phil starts to feed and we get the major bombshell of the chapter. Phil is technically some sort of android or robot, but here's how he explains it. When he was 3, he got sick, so his mother put him into this body. She transplanted his brain and nothing else, so at this point, he's only 10% organic tissue. And I love Yoshifumi's inclusion of this so much because in a sci-fi, horror, thriller, you gotta have some existential questions. And Phil is that question itself. What is a robot? What is a person who's only 10% organic matter? Is he a human? And it doesn't really matter. Fuko comes to that realization at the end of the chapter, as most pieces of sci-fi film come to that conclusion as well, but that's a real thing. Phil doesn't even know to himself, and he says to them, it's okay to call me a robot, because at this point he's 90% robot, right? But it's more of, I guess, the morality behind that being and what that entity actually believes in and tries to pursue. So we got a big chapter and we got a big arc, and I love Yoshifumi. He really is writing insanely well this second loop. Although the first loop was really hard-boiled and had a lot of fights and yada 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 in it, this one is just, we gotta keep going, but it may take the cake. So as all the Union learns this information, Nico obviously feels some sort of way about it. He reaches out to Phil and asks him, can I examine you? And Phil says, sure. He starts looking over his body, pulls up his gloves, sees that Phil's entire body is decaying a little bit. So he has to ask him, do you love your mom? Do you care for that woman? And he says, yes, I love her more than anything in the world. She's him. She loves him. And that's the crazy thing. What is it? Did she do anything wrong? That's the weird thing with science, I guess, right, Nico? She wanted to save her son, but put him into this body, presumably making him suffer. It's crazy. The existential questions. But here, Phil also tells us the situation of his mother. She's in the shelter of the second floor on the central tree. They'd be able to get to her if they get to that central area and take the elevator down. She's waiting right there for help. Phil was able to get out of that area and send word for help because he doesn't need air. So Phil states that he does not need air, which is interesting because that means he could just be walking around the ship right now and not have unfeel. And if he doesn't proc unfeel, hopefully he doesn't have to join the Union, which is, Billy's whole thing. He doesn't want all these kids to be around, so that would be I don't know, it'd be nice if we don't have to have a literal child robot join the Union. And if he doesn't get unfeel, I don't think he could actually put all those artifacts on his body, because he would still feel like the sensations which run through your body whenever you touch an artifact. You know how Fuko was when she went crazy stuff. Phil says that although his mother is sheltered, her safety is not promised, as they are after her. And although it wasn't Cthulhu, it was some sort of Lovecraftian horror which y'all didn't imagine. So as they all hurry along to the location of Phil's mom, Nico and Fuko converse for a second. Nico curious about what Fuko thinks is out there, but she has no idea. Since Uma Galaxy is already in play during this loop, it could be an Uma, it could be an alien, she just really cannot say right now. And with this extremely concerned look on her face, Phil comes over. He says, "You're making the same face Mom always makes." And then Phil brings out a string. He does a cat's cradle and Fuko immediately brightens up. He says, "Whenever Mom's face looks sad, I do this and she cheers up. So please, go ahead." And as soon as they're about to start playing, Phil says they're here. It's them. I think this right here is the confirmation that Phil does not have unfeel yet. And if Phil does have unfeel, it doesn't matter. Phil knows intrinsically what a good person is, what to look out for, who to care for, and how to care for them. He sees Fuko, a very caring woman that he's comparing to his mom, and he just thought, "You're not okay right now. Do you want to cheer up a little bit?" And he tried to cheer her up. Empathy, compassion, showing love for those who you care about. That's as human as it gets, right? Right? Fuko comes to that realization, but not yet, because a big bunch of hubbub comes. A horde of these creatures, which resemble some sort of alien, beetle, or roach or something, come rushing towards the Negators. And although Creed pulls out his gun, Phil says it's no use. He then forcibly separates the Union from himself with a shudder and says, "I told you I was going to show you how to beat them. As you can see, my body is already at its limit. I think my mom is more likely to survive if I leave the task of saving her to you." And as he finishes speaking, two of the monsters latch onto his arms. Fuko begins to scream for Nico to open the doors, but they seem to be shut with the firewall. And this is where the most hard-boiled individual in this whole chapter, Phil, begins to speak up, shooting electricity out of his arms into the monsters' mouths. He says the outer skin can't be pierced by blades or bullets. Their insides are their only weak points. And that's why Phil's been letting them eat them while he attacks them, because his mother told him she would do anything for the sake of someone she loves. And as I said earlier, this dude's trying to pull an Android 16. We get it. You're a sacrifice, Jay. Protect those who you love. I don't care, Phil. Stop that. And Fuko, get your mind in the right place. And right here, she snaps back to reality. Oh, there goes Rabbit. Come on. Fuko hops into action, realizing she's been a complete fool. She got wrapped up in thinking about Phil and the entire scenario which she's been brought into and all these unpredictable circumstances, but that's not what matters. What matters is that we have Phil right in front of us, this individual that, like the rest of the Union, just cares about others and cares about saving people and his mom. That's all he wants to do right now, and if she can't help him do that, along with saving himself, she's not doing anything right. I know for a fact Yoshifumi was not referencing Blam, I don't know how you say it, Nihei's work at all, but if you did not feel that killy energy with Fuko with just some space gun up in space blasting some monstrous space entities, you need to go read Blam. Fuko grabs Phil while pulling out her weapon, bringing out Bad Bullet 45. And she blasts straight through the monster, leaving it floating through space. She asks Phil, "Bring out your string." I have no idea why. If somebody could tell me why Fuko asked Phil to get out a string right now, tell me. I think it's just because he was feeling upset, maybe she's trying to reciprocate the love. I have no idea, but dog. Yoshifumi was in his bag writing this chapter. Really enjoyed it, and I think there's a lot of questions that we get to ask, and they're just interesting ones. They're fun ones to play around with for the time being, such as, does Phil have unfeel yet? I think through all of the emotion and he's shown this chapter, I don't know. I think we can kind of say he doesn't have it. The love he's showing for his mom and the sort of resolve he's showing to get to his mom seems like something that an unfeeling individual wouldn't have. But then he's like still a robot or whatever. But is he a robot? Is he a human? It's just, I love sci-fi, bro. It's always fun to ponder on these sort of debates, especially as we get into this age. AIs, machine learning, or we're gonna have robots, something like an android, probably within the next 50 years. If not for like consumer site, it'll be out there. What will it be? Pondering bullshit right now. But nah, Yoshifumi was in his Goyard duffel. I really hope we save Phil's mom. I really don't think he has on Phil yet. I think it would be cool if Phil's mother, though, being a really hard-boiled scientist, could maybe join the Union, keep Phil around. I have no idea. So much Undead Unluckington to do. So much. Love this series. The popularity poll will be out too. I don't know. I'll look.